Hello, everyone, and welcome to our topic today of elevating your executive presence, focus areas to become a charismatic leader. I'm sure everyone will take away some important information from this today, no matter what level you view your current executive presence at. And I'm happy to speak about this topic today. It's quite important. First of all, some webinar reminders and a few points to mention. Purpose. Our purpose today is to share approaches and focus areas to become a charismatic leader. Please write your questions in the Q&A section. Our goal is always to answer all questions at the close of the presentation. Otherwise, I will follow up with you by email afterwards. Regarding the materials, yes, the entire webinar is being recorded. You'll receive a link shortly via email. You'll also have the ability to download the presentation deck in its own separate file. For those with their IBDC.D certification, you'll receive your 1 CPE credit by attending. Just be sure to follow proper CPE credit submission guidelines. Okay, with that, let's get started. I'm your speaker and your host, Mark Pfister. I'm a governance and strategy expert. I've earned the nickname the board architect for my work in defining the structural components of effective boards. You're likely aware of my book, Across the Board, The Modern Architecture Behind an Effective Board of Directors. Quite a few copies in circulation in over 70 countries now, and I am the creator of the IBDC.D, a globally recognized board and board director education and certification program. Welcome again to all today for joining. All right, our goals for today. What do I hope you walk away with from today's discussion on elevating your executive presence? Number one, let's make sure we deeply understand what exactly is executive presence. What does this mean when we use this phrase and this terminology? Why does it matter? This is typically a surprise to many that it goes much more deeply than just how you present or convey yourself. And in section 3, we're going to cover really 3 areas in section 3, components of executive presence, how to know if you've got it. Are you doing the right things to get the right feedback? Are you evaluating yourself? Are you mindful in your evaluation of yourself? And some tips to improve this. And then, of course, I'd like to move into some Q&A. I think we'll have quite a few questions today on this topic. So, okay, let's start with what is exactly executive presence? Now, we hear this quite often, comments such as, this CEO has great executive presence. I know in the board director space, many times in the backroom discussions of nominating committees, you'll hear a comment such as, of all the director candidates, this one conveys the best executive presence. And we'll also hear quite often of our top 3 candidates, maybe equal in capabilities and experience. However, candidate number 2 has the best executive presence. We know that this really is an important aspect of how people evaluate you and your abilities. So part of the reason we're doing this topic today. Now, if we really define executive presence, what does this mean? A combination of people skills, character traits, and dynamic leadership capabilities that drives decisive action, clear communication, and confident leadership of a team or company. Now, this definition, I think, is quite clear, but we still have to define this a little bit further. And we want to go and start this whole discussion with the fact that executive presence is a highly important skill to possess for not only landing of positions, especially in the executive spaces and the board director spaces, but also for career advancement. Now, for many, executive presence still remains in this realm of, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. There's many areas like this in leadership, but we're going to attempt to break this down a little further today. And my goal is really to give you direct areas of focus to how to evaluate yourself and maybe get feedback from others to help you hone this skill. All right, so just as part of our kickoff, what it should mean to you, simply summarized, executive presence is how you want others to judge how you carry yourself, how you communicate, and of course, how you lead. Let me show you a few areas of how to evaluate this and what you can do. So why does it matter, first and foremost? Leaders with executive presence are commonly described as charismatic and inspirational. And more importantly, when it comes down to the interview process or the meeting process, let's just say in the candidate process for any type of leadership position, it makes you memorable. People don't always remember what your accomplishments were or what exactly you did or what your titles were, but they will remember how you made them feel, as the famous statement goes. So, executive presence is truly a way to make you more memorable. And this is what you want in terms of decisioning processes for appointments, especially in the board director space. Now, again, what's in it for you and why does this matter? It, of course, influences hiring and promotion decisions. You're seen as a differentiator. It is seen as a differentiator among equally skilled candidates, as I've mentioned. And also, it impacts trust, influence, and perception. And this particular circle here is important in my evaluation of leaders because this has the unique ability to make your role not only more enjoyable, but more impactful. So, someone who comes across as confident or competent, we're going to talk about some of these areas today. It really impacts the trust and the influence and the perception, which can truly make your role more enjoyable by focusing more on the actual topic at hand, not on the aspects of making you more believable or have more influence. Again, it's focusing your efforts in the right area to make sure you're forwarding the topic of discussion further. So, as some say, executive presence is not only about possibly making your appearance or a better appearance or speaking well, but it's truly about, again, perception, authenticity, and consistency. These three areas of perception, authenticity, and consistency, you're going to come up multiple times throughout our discussion today. I'd like you to keep that in the back of your mind as we go through our topic today. And also, there are sometimes limited ways to convey your demeanor. I would say if you do an initial submission, we know in the board director realm, we're submitting not resumes, but your board documents. It's not by chance that we list your core leadership traits across all of your board documents in a properly created board document. This helps to convey your demeanor and what's important to you. But still, until you get that in-person interview or that in-person interaction, the early stages of the in-person interaction is really probably the most impactful aspect of showing and conveying your executive presence. All right. This is where we really get into the meat of today's discussion and we talk about the components of executive presence. For some, you may be surprised how many there are, and we'll dig into these areas. Let's first say that we call these the 11 C's. So the expertise and traits most associated with executive presence include these 11 areas. And yes, they all begin with the letter C. I'm not sure how this came about in the beginning, but they're quite impactful. So we talk about charisma, confidence, competence, composure, conviction, conciseness, command, character, connection, credibility, and clarity. Let's start to break these down so we understand not just how they operate in, say, their individual areas, but also you should start to see very quickly the interconnectedness of these areas. So let's start out with focus area one, charisma. And I do want to say first off that the format of this particular presentation has a lot more text than I typically do, but I did this purposely to make sure this is a great reference for you when I send this out later and you have the ability to download this. So there's a little more text and verbiage, I'll say, in this particular presentation, but that's done by design and on purpose. So charisma is defined as the magnetic charm that draws others in. How are you drawing people to you? And in this case, why does this matter? Charisma makes people more likely to listen, trust, and follow your lead. Very important in leadership. And charisma can also make your presence unforgettable in high stakes situations, appointments, interviews, trying to make a point in times of crisis. These are super important areas to have this charisma. And let's talk about some of the signs you have it or you don't. Now, if people are naturally drawn to you, engage with your ideas, and seek your perspective, you likely exude charisma. There are folks that are, quite frankly, great leaders, but they don't exude charisma. And when I work with them in performance coaching type scenarios, I try to show them how to take their knowledge and their presence in these areas and really convert this over into this charisma that's quite important as it relates to leadership. Now, One easy way to evaluate if you don't have this, if you feel that conversations feel one-sided or others seem disengaged or indifferent, it may signal a lack of this. Don't fret, don't worry. There's a way to build this up, and we're going to talk about that next, how to develop this. Some of these areas, I don't mean to oversimplify, but there are, quite frankly, very simple ways to start to hone, in this case, charisma or focus area 1 of 11. And how do you develop this? This active listening aspect is quite important. Just showing your interest and that you're focused on someone when they're in your office or you're having a discussion with them or you're in charge of them or giving them input, really show that you're actively listening to what they have to say. It shows this genuine interest. And you can also use other aspects of storytelling to connect emotionally. Tell a story where something either worked out or didn't work out for you. It's truly a way to connect with people. If we talk about the physical attributes of eye contact, expressive body language, and warmth in your tone, this can also help this aspect of showing or conveying magnetic charm of charisma and truly draw other people in. So again, super important area of charisma. All right, focus area 2 of 11, confidence, belief in oneself conveyed with assurances. So, how do we do this, or why it matters, first of all? Confidence builds trust and reassures others in your leadership. We all kind of know that body language or the aspect of someone who doesn't really come across as quite confident, doesn't really build up our confidence in them to lead us through some type of change in the organization or delivery of a big aspect of the organization's goals. Confidence is also foundational to taking decisive action and influencing others. So we know that we want to be confident and also not appear arrogant in this. There is quite a fine line between those areas. So when we talk about executive presence, those that cross over into that appearing arrogant, we've all worked for someone like this before. We know what that looks like. We've all reported into somebody or maybe worked alongside somebody with this arrogance. We want to be very cautious to avoid crossing that line from decisive action and confidence into the arrogant area. Now, what are some signs you have it or you don't? So, if you're able to speak assertively and you own your decisions and you're comfortable admitting what you don't know, this ability to actually show and have some vulnerability is quite a good way of actually building up confidence. It almost seems counterintuitive, but it's a great way to show that you are trusting other people and you have confidence to show that you know that you're able to talk about what you don't know. This is one way to really show that you either have confidence or you have confidence. Now, some of the aspects, if you don't have it, if you often second guess yourself or you don't have the confidence to show eye contact or downplay your contributions, confidence may be lacking. Now, sometimes it's even in the choice of words that we use. If you're constantly apologizing for interrupting somebody, or you take the opposite approach to say, I feel the need to interrupt you because of your knowledge base or your expertise in this area. Choose words very confidently to show confidence, if it's a proper way to say it, and how you go about this. So, what are some things you can do to develop this? You build competence or confidence through competence through preparation and practice. So, nobody is going to feel confident, for example, in a topic they just learned to be able to talk about it in depth, or to be able to answer questions confidently that come up that they may not be prepared for. So start to think about your confidence is directly built off your competence, and it's directly related to your preparation and your practice that helps you to reframe self-doubt with positive talk. That can also be quite helpful. Remember also that small wins can help build confidence. Start to celebrate those, even things that you've accomplished as well as those around you. Body posture. Now, we typically use the terminology of power posing. I don't mean, showing your muscles or flexing. What we're talking about here are very simple ways of sitting up straight, not slouching, keeping your chin up a little bit, showing things or aspects of your demeanor that you are confident in how you're approaching something or entering a conversation. And don't be scared to consistently step outside of your comfort zone. I can tell you that that is where you learn the most. You also build up the confidence to jump into things that you're maybe not aware of currently or things that need a little more honing. So, a few reminders there on how to develop confidence in your executive presence. Focus area three, lots to talk about here, I know. Competence, being highly capable and effective. So, why this matters? There's no better way to earn trust and respect than to be highly capable and effective in your areas of leadership. It's really the backbone of executive presence, as it states here. Signs you have it or you don't. You display competence when others consistently seek your input, rely on your expertise, and consistently deliver strong results. Now, I know that sounds very simple in how it's described, but be open to the fact that you want to share information, you want to teach. Don't be one of those people that is constantly protecting the information they have. Be open to share that information. It truly can build up the perception of your competence for those both up the chain of leadership and those peers or those that report directly into you. Signs you don't have it are struggling to answer questions or missing details or being overlooked for key projects may suggest a gap. Now, I want to be very clear. When I talk about struggling to answer questions, that does not mean that you're making things up to answer a question. Be confident, as we talked about a moment ago, to say, I don't know the answer to this, but I'll find out. Don't be the type of person that is trying to fill the gap or the uncomfortable silence with just text or talking to try to make it sound like you know what you're talking about. That is no way to show that you have competence. Be the person that's willing to admit that they don't know currently, but they're going to find out. So how do you develop this? Continuous learning is the biggest aspect of developing competence. So continuously sharpen your skills through learning and gain additional experiences, volunteer for things in your organization, and also feedback. Be the person that's open to feedback. We're going to talk a little bit about the feedback loops as we get further into our conversation today. And of course, know your subject deeply and don't be afraid, as I mentioned a moment ago, to say, I'll find out. It shows both humility and professionalism. So, a couple of ways, a couple of areas to think about here as you go and try to convey the competence. There are folks that have a deep knowledge base in certain expertise areas, but they're still not able to show their competence because they don't have the ability to convey it. So, again, don't be afraid to say you'll find out, but also show humility in the way you describe your knowledge and your expertise. All right. Now, composure, staying calm under pressure. This is one that I think everybody today, including me, still works on. How do you make sure in the from the first introduction of some sort of issue or crisis all the way through to the conclusion and the solution of that crisis, how do you show your composure and stay calm? Now you see a little star on the upper left-hand side here where it says non-negotiable number one. As we go through these 11 focus areas of executive presence, you're going to see where I mention in three areas this non-negotiable. This is absolutely number one, and it's something I really want to find out. If it's a board director interview for a candidate, I'm really trying to understand what their demeanor is and as it relates to their composure and what they do during times of upheaval or change. So, first off, why does this matter? Composure under pressure signals high emotional intelligence and steadiness. One of the easiest ways to lose your following, or as they say, lose your flock, is by showing this emotional response to something that comes up in the organization. Remember that people that report into you or those that you're leading are looking for this steadiness and this composure, and they're looking for direction. Somebody who is falling into the emotional response to this is not going to be able to lead a group of people or gain their confidence if they don't have composure. So signs you have this. Again, not the easiest thing to show unless there is some sort of crisis. For me, I love to see leaders in some sort of crisis scenario, especially if I'm doing an evaluation of them. But we like to think about leaders as they convey themselves, even in normal scenarios. Do they demonstrate composure? Are they of a calm demeanor? Excuse me. Do they stay focused? And a big one that I mentioned here and I added in here specifically is, do they remain respectful even when they're challenged? And in today's world, we see that many people, if they're challenged on a topic or an issue that they've brought to the table, they view that challenge as a direct attack on them, not as a way to further the debate on the topic itself. So be very careful that you are not coming across as a person when challenged, that you're viewing it as a personal attack. View the topic as being worked through, and the questions are coming out to really mold this outcome to the best outcome possible. And that's a really easy way to tell if somebody has composure and how they respond to challenges to their topics or their ideas. Now, as we say here, signs you don't have it: frequent frustration, visible stress, some sort of reactive behavior. I just mentioned this a moment ago. Intense moments may indicate a lack of composure. How do we develop composure? So, first off, we want to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness truly, I believe, is the proactive aspect of emotional intelligence. So we have emotional intelligence and we have mindfulness intelligence. Incidentally, something we teach deeply in the IBDC.D course, how to really hone these areas to make sure you're being viewed as not just having emotional intelligence, but the mindfulness intelligence also. How are you reading the room? How are you making sure the things you propose are done in the way that are going to be received properly? And I like also this pause before responding. And you may have witnessed this with some great speakers, especially during Q&A type areas of their sessions, where they're asked the question. Steve Jobs, by the way, was famous for this. He truly, maybe even some would describe it as an uncomfortable, lengthy pause after being asked possibly a combative question. He would pause for a while. And what that shows is that you're getting ready for something very mindful in your response. You're taking time to think about it. You're not just trying to fill the dead air space. You're making sure that your response is going to be impactful. And also manage your stress through breathing techniques or other preparation. This really is an area that can be easily honed just by practicing this. Put yourself through scenarios where you say, I know that we started or we're aiming for a certain goal, and this is our strategy to reach that goal. What is going to be my response if I hear that XYZ does not go per plan? What am I going to do? I'm going to make sure that I pause. I'm going to make sure I think about it. I'm going to be prepared in what my response is going to be to those areas. So don't just prepare for the positive, prepare for the negative also. And remember that building composure often starts with managing your internal state so you can project calm externally. Again, what I'm mentioning here, be prepared for these areas. Don't let some sort of derailment of even a small area of a project or a goal you're trying to reach undermine your composure. Again, for me, non-negotiable on this for senior leadership, especially board directors. All right, focus area 5 of 11, conviction, speaking with strength and belief. Do you truly believe what you're mentioning or what you're talking about? So, why it matters. It inspires confidence in others. If you speak with conviction, of course, it has the ability to inspire confidence. Also, it shows you're willing to stand firm when it counts. So we're going to make some of the correlations shortly, or you'll hear me talk about in today's lecture, the correlation of conviction to character. So someone with low character is not going to be able to stand up for their team and show conviction. We want to make sure that you're willing to stand up when it counts. Signs you have it or you don't. You have conviction if you speak with purpose. You hold your ground on important issues and don't shy away from taking a stand. I'm going to put a little asterisk next to that for one other little topic here on this page in just a moment. Signs you don't have it. You waffle under pressure. Maybe you avoid some of the debate or the uncomfortable situations, or as we say, difficult truths. Some things are hard to hear, but we have to be willing to hear it. These things may suggest the lack of it. Thankfully, there's ways to hone this, and we're going to talk about that next. Clarifying your core values and beliefs. There's no better way to stand up for your convictions than to be able to match them directly back to your values. And remember, for those from the IBDC.D course, we know the direct correlation of values to the culture of the organization. Make it easy on yourself. Understand that your conviction can be directly aligned to the values, which then builds the culture of the organization. And I mentioned a moment ago the little asterisks on don't shy away from taking a stand. This is what I mean by this in the next item here. Prepare to defend your position thoughtfully. And remember, conviction does not mean rigidity. It means standing strong with integrity. Be open to changing your opinion, but also make sure it still fits within your values base. Hear what other people have to say, use it to weigh in on the final outcome of your decisioning. This conviction aspect is something we are lacking, desperately lacking in much leadership today for many reasons. Fear of that leader of losing their job, fear of that leader potentially not being viewed as somebody who, say, thought through a process or didn't get the feedback they needed, or simply standing up for something in the face of adversity in their environment. Conviction is very important. All right, we're moving along here. Lots to talk about. Conciseness, clear and brief communication. This is something that many struggle with today. Again, it's filling the void of airspace with talk and filler type words. We want to avoid that. So, clear and brief communication shows respect for others' time. This is a big thing in the boardroom. Limited time in a boardroom, be able to be concise and get your point across very quickly and with the details you feel you need to get across. It helps to sharpen your message. It also earns attention and trust. This should be very clear to everybody on today's webinar. Now, signs you have it or you don't. You're concise if you can deliver your message clearly in a few powerful sentences. I challenge everybody today within this webinar to start to think about this. What are some things you have coming up where you have to convey or communicate something that's important in your organization or to someone you're working with? Think about this in a way of what are the few powerful sentences that you would state to make your point instead of a long paragraph. Think in sentences, not long paragraphs. Now, a good way to know if you don't have this, if people often seem confused or they check out from listening to you or they ask for clarification that you may have thought you've already given. You may be saying too much or not enough of what matters. There's some very easy ways to take care of this conciseness, and I can tell you that you'll get quite good feedback on this and responses from those on the receiving end of things you mentioned. So, number one, think deeply before speaking. Lead in with the key points and eliminate, as we mentioned, any filler or repetition. So this leading with the key point is quite an important aspect to think about. I like to do this by mentioning the goal first of what I'm going to follow with the details. So I'm mentioning the goal, maybe then I'm touching on the strategy, and then if need be, I'll get into the more detailed areas of the tasks or how we're going to support the strategy to reach the goals. Quite an easy way to think about this. And practice distilling complex ideas into brief, impactful messages. A great way to know or to evaluate a speaker, let's say they're a leader or a CEO, is to watch how they host a town hall meeting. What are they talking about first? How are they setting the tone? I like to do that through a reiteration of the values of the organization first. Maybe calling out somebody within the audience, the employees of the organization, commending someone for conveying or for following that particular value of the organization, then moving into the goals of the organization as a reminder, and then moving into the purpose of that meeting in support of the goals. That's a great way to show conciseness, and everybody understands why they're sitting there listening to you for whatever point you want to get across. All right. And practice distilling complex ideas into brief, impactful messages. Use the pausing again to show the breaks between the concept or the topic areas to make sure your words land. Read the body language in the room at the same time as well. People's faces don't lie. A crunched up face is someone who is thinking about what exactly you tried to get across that you mentioned. Someone who's open to it and has received it is waiting with I'll say not a crunched up face to understand what's coming next to support what you mentioned. So read the audience, read the body language, read the room. All right, command, presence that signals leadership. You're going to start to see some overlap in these areas, but there are truly specific focus areas of each of these topics of, in this case, command. But as we go through these, you should start to be putting together now the interrelationship between these areas. So presence that signals leadership. What does this mean? Signals authority, credibility, and readiness to lead. There are many great leaders out there, but you may not evaluate them or they may not convey to you their readiness to lead. This goes back to topics of when a new CEO starts in an organization. A lot of times they're given this leeway to ramp up for 6 months or a period of time. How do you still, as a leader, show that you're ready to lead even as you're ramping up and you're going through your onboarding and your orientation process in the organization? We could make very correlatable points also for someone that has just been appointed to a new board and they're joining. How are you still showing command as you're learning more details about that organization and their board? Another important aspect of why it matters, command helps others feel secure in your direction and your decisions. So how do we know if we have it or we don't? If people are naturally looking to you for direction, they are deeply listening when you speak and respond to your presence, meaning that they acknowledge when you appear in a room or you enter some area. You likely have command. Now, one way to know if you don't have command is if you're often overlooked, you're talked over, you're interrupted frequently, you're dismissed. This presence may be somewhat underdeveloped. Now, the good news is with command, which again is quite important, there are ways to develop this. You can strengthen your voice, your posture, as we mentioned a moment ago. In your presence, you want to speak clearly, stand tall, and maintain purposeful movement. And let's not discredit by any means getting across your point very quickly and succinctly to make sure that your command is not undermined by lengthy conversations or here so and so goes again on their long summary of something we already understand. Also, you want to practice asserting your point without dominating. And enter spaces. This is an important topic here. Enter spaces as if you belong, because you do. There's many examples of this. I don't have enough time today to go through one that truly affected me in my life in terms of leadership and command. But just know when you enter a room, don't be the one that shies away from conversation or going to introduce yourself. Be the person that is somewhat open. Even if you're an introvert, you still have the ability to take a chance once in a while. Go ahead and do it. Find the most important person in the room, go up to them first, say hello, introduce yourself. It will help you build your confidence in doing that in other scenarios. Now, character. This is a big one for today. Moral integrity and trustworthiness. We, of course, expect this of everybody. We don't always see it in all scenarios. Why does this matter? Character is the foundation of trust. So it is almost impossible to build trust if you're not able to show your moral integrity and your trustworthiness. It's not possible. Without it, executive presence lacks substance. We all likely know the person that's able to speak a great game, can talk very eloquently about things they want to accomplish, but we know that if their character is undermined or they lack that moral integrity, we're already prepared maybe not for that to make such an impact or for it to land for us in how they're making their comments. So character is, of course, huge in the scenario of building up your executive presence. If I give one example for those that already have their IBDC.D certification, even before you make that face-to-face introduction, hopefully for a board candidate interview, you're trying to get across and properly develop board documents your character in the area that we call your leadership traits or your core leadership traits. You're calling that right out in your board documents, which is what makes it different than a resume or a CV. You're showing that character matters to you. So you can do that whether you're in the room or you're not in the room. There's ways to look at doing that. So signs you have it or you don't. You're seen as having character when others view you as ethical, fair, and dependable. And the easiest one to get across as soon as possible here is dependable. Showing up for appointments on time is one of the easiest ones to show that you have a certain level of character that makes you dependable. Red flags include cutting corners or blaming others or a gap between your words and actions. I started to talk about this a minute ago. Be the person that does what you say you're going to do and make sure what you say you're going to do is impactful and is not just beneficial to you, but the overall organization, the people you lead, the employees of the organization, and hopefully even those that consume your product or your services. Now, how do you develop this? Clarify your personal values. Again, we're going back to the values component. Remember, lower risk is directly relate lowering risk is directly related to the values that either you and your organization hold, and of course the culture of the organization following those values. So make sure your personal values, the organization's values, and the decisions you make are aligned and in step with those three areas. Be accountable. Keep your promises. Lead by example, especially in difficult moments that test your ethics. One big one that comes across right now is being able to admit when you're wrong. I have some of the deepest respect for those, especially in leadership positions, where they are extremely open to mention when they made a mistake or something was wrong, or they didn't have all the details at that point, and they take responsibility for that. Be the person with character that relates back to also not only celebrating the positive aspects, but also being open to the negative areas, such as being wrong in some of your decision making. All right, a few more here. Connection, ability to relate and build rapport, the bond that you want to have with those around you. Why it matters. It allows you to build trust, foster loyalty, and inspire action. The big thing with connection here is I'm going to focus on this inspire action for just a moment. Again, some leaders can host the most amazing town hall. Everybody claps at the end. Everybody's happy. They walk out of there. But did it truly inspire action? It's the connection aspect here that can inspire the action. Um, and it really makes others feel like they matter. I'm a big fan of making sure that those that report into you or those that you lead are not delivering things such as the goals or the strategy of the organization. They're not delivering it to make the leader happy. They're doing it to make themselves happy or to feel fulfilled or to feel like they're making an impact. This is where the connection and showing that you have the ability to relate and build that rapport. This is where that bond can show very clearly that the actions of the employees and the other leaders in the organization are, again, not to make that overall leader elevate their career and how they're viewed, but how does everybody join along in that elevation? So signs you have it or you don't. If people open up to you, they feel comfortable around you, you're able to create rapport quickly, you're showing a strong connection. That really is the ability to relate again here. If you feel that conversations are transactional or others seem distant or those you lead seem distant, you may need to work in this area. And just to be clear, when I say transactional, if all of your interactions are very factual with those that you lead, you ask a question, the person responds in a fact of what they've done. There's no other emotion involved in that. So let's say there's no other aspects that you could put your finger on that relate back to core leadership traits. To me, that's really not the most impactful way to lead. You want to keep a nice balance, I'll say, of the transactional and the connection aspects, so the bond area of this. Look for balances in those areas. Now, how do you develop this? Practicing empathy and truly active listening. Make sure you understand the topic. Show the person that is coming to you with their thoughts that you're listening. You're not just hearing them, you're listening to them. You're asking thoughtful questions that align to their biggest concerns of what they just described to you. And of course, being present in conversations. I'm a fan, or a practicer, maybe is the better way to say this, a practitioner. If somebody steps into my office, and they want to talk, I close the lid on my laptop. I don't even allow for the temptation of peering over to see if an email came in during that time. Be the one that's present. And of course, small gestures like remembering names, showing appreciation, simply following up, they go a long way in deepening relationships. The people aspects is what we're talking about here. Number 10. All right, I know we're going in a lot of areas here, but I want to give you the details of this and maybe give you that checklist to go through as you evaluate yourself. Another non-negotiable, you'll see non-negotiable number 2 here, credibility, being seen as believable and reliable. We all want to make sure that we're others feel that we are. Why it matters determines whether people believe in you, your message, and your ability to deliver. Without it, we know that even the best ideas can fall flat. So, signs you have it. I'm going to speed up here to keep a little bit on time. You're seen as credible when others trust your expertise. They follow you, they ask questions, they view you as reliable. If you're frequently questioned, second guessed, or need to prove yourself repeatedly, that credibility may be lacking. I will add in here also that sometimes can be the outcome of a bad leader that you're reporting into, just be open enough to evaluate both sides of this coin, evaluate yourself and the leadership aspect of it, and see if it's you that has the credibility issue or the leader that has the credibility issue. Now, how can you develop this for yourself? Be consistent in what you say and do. Own your mistakes. I mentioned this earlier. Own them. Be open to admit when you've made a mistake. And of course, follow through on your commitments. Support your insights with facts. This is a big one. Do your homework on this, on anything that you propose. Make sure you are able to answer the tough questions and you can show the background to support why you're proposing what you're mentioning. And let your track record speak for itself. Build up your wins. Don't be scared to talk about your wins as well. LinkedIn is a great mechanism to allow you to let your track record speak for itself. Don't be shy in talking about some of your accomplishments. Just be very clear that you're giving credit to not just yourself or solely yourself, but those that helped you get there. All right. And the last one, focus area 11, clarity. You'll also see this as a non-negotiable. We all are we all tune out very easily if someone's not able to be understood or get their point across very quickly. Why it's important or why it matters, it ensures your message is understood without confusion. It's essential for influencing others and gaining support for your ideas. Signs you have it. You have clarity when your message is concise, direct, and everyone's on the same page. That word everyone I know is a little bit all-encompassing, but let's say a majority of the people are on the same page. You're always going to have questions that come up. Now, if your audience seems confused or asks for clarification repeatedly, misinterprets your intentions, clarity might be lacking. This area you can work on, and you can develop it by structuring your communication around a key point. I mentioned this a moment ago. Start with the goal in mind or the strategy area in mind, and then deliver the ideas around that. Be the person that can simplify complex ideas and eliminate any of the unnecessary talking or the jargon that's surrounding many of our descriptions today. And always be open for feedback. So check for understanding and encourage open dialogue to ensure alignment. Again, this comes back to the mature leader being open for some dissent or pushback, but being confident enough that you're able to address those concerns, that those concerns are being looked at, even if your approach doesn't change, you're still making sure that those that voice their opinions and their concerns are being heard. All right, a few areas of this, and there's countless examples of interconnectedness we could talk about here. I'll just point out a couple here. So, for example, your competence in a certain area has a direct correlation to the confidence of others around you. If you're able to talk about a topic, if you're able to teach it, that competence can build a confidence in other people coming to you with questions, guidance, wanting to know more about your expertise and your experience. Your character can show directly your conviction. So we see this a lot today with leaders that are either able to or not willing to stand up for people in their environments or the people they lead. Character has a direct relationship to conviction. And of course, clarity to command. So if you're not able to clearly convey what it is you want to accomplish, what the goals are, you're not going to be able to command your organization or those that you lead to do what you want to get done. How do you make sure that they are also understanding how it affects them? Okay, so as we start to wrap up here and move into Q&A, it's a relief to many that executive presence can indeed be learned. Yes, you can practice it. I truly challenge you to be the leader who hones this skill and then helps to teach it to others. Make sure those around you, or even those that report into you, know how you're evaluating them. Reiterate these 11 points to them. Show them what you're thinking about when they come to you to propose something or you do their review for them. Add these 11 points into those evaluations. Now, quickly before we get to the Q&A section, let me first mention we touch on a lot of this topic of executive presence. We also talk about the linked behavioral predispositions in the International Board Director Competency Designation. For those that have been through this already, you're well aware of that. If you have not been through this course, I welcome you to visit it. Check out what we do, how we teach this, and show how it helps you not only become a modern board director candidate, but also how you can package yourself properly to show this before you even have that face-to-face interview. I also welcome you to check out our performance coaching. You can see here one of the main areas of focus that we look into and we develop further and hone is this elevating your executive presence. This is quite a fun program for me to implement because a lot of your future successes are directly related back to your executive presence. We work on honing all of those areas. All right, so let's move to Q&A. Give me 1 second here to get set up with that. And we'll start out with this. Are there specific questions you ask during board candidate interviews to assess executive presence? Absolutely. So let me say, even before I ask a directly related question that relates to executive presence, I'll start to look for these 11 areas or these 11 focus areas of executive presence. So I want to observe those areas first. I like to ask the question also of how does that candidate or that individual self-rate their executive presence. What I'm looking for there is obviously not, I don't want to see cockiness come from that. I want to see if they are truly in tune with naming a few of the other areas that we talked about a moment ago. Are they aware? Are they mindful of those areas? And that's how people perceive them. I want to understand how they hone and elevate their executive presence. I can tell you to the day we die, all of us will be honing this area. I want to know what they feel their areas that they need to further work on. What do they view that's maybe very well developed and what's underdeveloped right now? But again, what I'm mainly looking for is I want to see someone who's self-aware that this is extremely important and one of the foundational areas for their leadership presence and for their impact and their effectiveness. All right, let's see here. I have been told that I walk into a room like I own the place, but at the same time, I have been told that I am intimidating. How do you balance command and still be approachable? Yeah. So let me first say that in today's world, there are certain aspects that any level of command that you show will be viewed as intimidating by someone who hasn't honed their own skill set of executive presence. So I would first say to take this with a grain of salt. Don't necessarily view it initially as a negative. Um, some people are just simply intimidated by those that have more expertise and experience, for example. What I would say is this. Number one is that I see that you're mindful because um, you are aware of this, um, and you are approachable. I'll say also because whoever is thinking this way is able to tell you they feel that you're intimidating. So you've already satisfied a couple of the areas that I would view as quite important. Maybe start to look a little more across the 11 areas here where you can show the command area still, but maybe soften that up with other areas of inclusiveness or other things. I would truly say to look back at the 11 areas that we mentioned here and see if we can elevate some of those and maybe, if need be, tone down some of that aspect of command. I would tell you to do a very deep evaluation of that and be open to asking for input from others. Go to people you respect for that type of feedback, however, not those that may just be intimidated for any type of challenge or pushback, as I mentioned earlier in our discussion today. Okay, let's see what other questions we have here. Um, Let's see. Hi, Mark. Not a question, but in thinking about starting into a new position, CEO or board, I'd suggest keeping uppermost in mind one's abilities and trust in them and that they got where they are. Absolutely. Not to say we all can't improve more, but trust in oneself relates to many of the C's. I absolutely agree with you on that. This comes back to the self-evaluation, not just at the beginning to make sure that you're doing these areas or focusing in these areas of the 11 we mentioned, but also consistently doing self-evaluation. Absolutely. Great point. Thank you. Okay, many meetings, another one. Many meetings are now online. Which C's are most important to convey exec presence in virtual meetings? I would honestly tell you, I don't view any difference in the format of the meeting. Um, Relating back to the importance or the priority of the 11 C's. The great leaders that I interact with or work with or coach, they are not concerned with the medium of how they convey the 11 C's. They're more concerned with they're consistent in it. So don't view the medium virtual, remote, in person, town halls, small meeting groups. I would tell you, don't go down the path of thinking that the medium matters more so than the actual conveying and the focus on those 11 areas. They're always important, no matter what type of setting. And I think there's a similar question here. In your opinion, how can you show your executive presence as part of your online presence? So, and I'm going to say the person's name that asked this, Anouk. I appreciate you joining and asking that question because I know this is extremely important in the areas that you teach. You host a couple of lessons in the course as well. Hopefully, what I'm about to mention resonates with you because some of these things I actually learned from you. So, number one is on the online presence. I'm a fan of the video conferencing aspect to show your body language. Body language is extremely important. It's not by chance when you see my video right now that it's not only my face you see, but you see a portion of my body as well. I want you to be able to see my hand movements and how I'm dressed and how I'm approaching, how I'm speaking, that I'm smiling when I speak a lot of times. I'm laughing at things I say sometimes. This executive presence is not just about how you convey verbally, but what the body language connection is to that. So, Anouk, to your comment and question here, I would say that the visual aspect is extremely important, and being very much aware of the 11 areas we talked about. Don't be the person that's complaining about how much you don't like Zoom calls or video conferencing. Look for the instances where you can actually get to the aspect of hosting your meetings as much as possible in video formats. It's a really great way to help elevate your executive presence. Okay. Um, how would you suggest asking for feedback on the 11 C's and from what levels in the organization? Great question. So, number one, definitely you want to ask for feedback for those that you report into or those responsible for your yearly reviews. You already know if they're asking you questions or you're asking them for their feedback on things that are important to them, it's going to come out as part of how they evaluate you and how they rate you at the end of the year. Um, but I'm not always a fan, I'll say, of only having this as a top-down evaluation. In my personal experiences, I've been able to further hone with more impact my executive presence by doing a bottom-up approach. And how do we do that? So let me just first say that um, the bottom-up approach can be quite impactful, but you want to do it in such a way where you don't undermine your authority. So let's say you're in a one-to-one meeting with someone that reports into you. Ask more generic questions on how a direct report views you or the overall company leadership. What would they change if they had the chance to? How would they lead differently in the organization? Maybe pick a few of these 11 C's area for direct questions on how the employee would rate them within their leadership chain directly. So I'm not a big fan of in these scenarios of asking a direct report what they would change or do differently as it relates to you exactly. I don't want you to undermine your leadership or your impact areas, but definitely open up the door for those questions to come to light, but ask them in a more generic way, I guess is what I'm trying to state here. Okay. Any other questions here? Is it possible to do an honest self-evaluation of executive presence? I think certain aspects, if you're a very mindful person and of high emotional intelligence, you can do this, but I don't think you can do this 100% by only doing a self-evaluation. Yes, some people are able to do it more effectively than others to a certain degree, but as I mentioned a moment ago, the most impactful areas that I've worked on in my career relating to executive presence were things I wasn't aware of. I would tell you, even my hand gestures during a meeting were called out by a leader I respected, and I went and I asked them the question. I said to them, I feel confident and in command during my responses back to questions in my presentation. How would you view XYZ areas? And when they would come back and talk about how maybe some of my body language could be honed a little bit. Look for the input, go to people you trust, be open and willing to hear things you may not want to hear. That can run the gamut of the type of feedback that you may get, but be open to it. You may be quite surprised of things you never even thought about that someone gives you feedback on. And then when you get that feedback, try to compare it to one of the 11 areas or multiple areas of the 11 we discussed today. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me see. Let's see here. Another great question. How can leaders elevate their executive presence while navigating the complex intersection of climate change, shifting tariffs, and the growing pressure on global operations and supply chains? In this question, I view all of the challenges that are mentioned, the exact challenge is almost as irrelevant because 5 years from now, we'll be talking about different challenges. To me, it all comes back to, are we truly in command? Are we in control of our emotions to these responses? Do we have the right inputs around us to make sure that we are confident and competent in our responses to these areas? Are we looking for the proper feedback? I would say to this question, dissociate the actual or decouple the actual challenges from the 11 C's area and say that these can work for anything. If you're focused on the 11 C's, it doesn't matter what type of challenge, issue, or crisis comes up. You know how you're going to go about not only solutioning it, but you know what type of demeanor and what you want how you want it to be received, what you're mentioning and how you're solutioning. All right. I think we're going to hold it there. I believe that is all the questions for today. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining today. I hope you found this helpful. Again, you'll receive this shortly so you can start to hone your 11 C's. Thank you, everybody. See you soon. Bye now.